Go. Thank you all so much. Sometimes I gotta work it out, work it out. There we go. Just a little background before we get started. I have a deep connection with Acadia. I lived 30 years in Maine, raised 3 children there, and have, I think, probably done about 5 projects in Acadia, including 1 director's retreat. And so I want to keep this going. I also want to introduce Christina McIntyre, who's our president-elect of the National Council, who will be president after our conference in October, and Melissa Beringer from, is it South Dakota, Melissa?
Yep. University of South Dakota.
And she's an alum of the director's retreat, but has also done a number of trips. What trips have you done, Melissa?
So I did the director's retreat, and then we did a project in New York City. And I've been planning one on the Missouri River.
And Christina, your projects have been?
Great Smoky Mountain twice, maybe 3 times. Appalachian Trail based in Harper's Ferry, and then also based down in Southwest Virginia. And we got to spend some time actually hiking, backpacking on the AT.
Cool. And I've done Everglades, Acadia, Rocky Mountains, Smoky Mountains. I think that's it. But our most important guest is Kate Petrie, who is our ranger here from Acadia. And I have to say thank you right up front, Kate, because I know this is the busiest time in Acadia, isn't it? Or is it August?
We're right in the peak of the bell curve.
That's right, peak of the bell curve. And she's so organized. She doesn't need me at all. So I want to introduce you. Kate's been with the National Park Service for 31 years, a UMaine graduate in forestry, also has a master's in education. We've been communicating, I think, since we had this idea back in January. And she's going to talk to you about how beautiful Acadia is, and also the kinds of careers you might think about in the national park system. But it also expands your mind too about what kind of careers you can get anywhere, but how they actually fit in the park system. So thank you so much, Kate. I'm going to go on mute now, and you get to take over.
Thank you. And Kathleen, I'll keep an eye on the chat as well, but if something pops up that I don't see, please let me know. I'm Kate Petrie. I'm the education coordinator for Acadia National Park. I started here as a bee station attendant while I was still in college, finished my degree and started working in the field of interpretation, and slowly through the years have worked my way through a series of jobs to what I'm doing now. And it's been diverse, it's different every day, and I've had enough on-the-job training that it's allowed me to really get a good idea of what other divisions in the Park Service are doing as well. What I'm going to start out doing today, I'll take questions anytime in chat or wave to me. The way my computer setup is, when I start showing my slideshow, you'll all be about ½ an inch high. So if you put things in chat, they'll be easier to see. I want to give you just a brief overview of the park. And then I'm going to talk about the park mission and how the different divisions work to conserve the resources in the park. I'll also take questions and answers towards the end. But I have a question for you starting out. First of all, how many people have been to Acadia? You have anybody out there who's been to Acadia? If you have, what is one of your favorite places? Go ahead and put it right in the chat so everybody can see. It's on somebody's bucket list. I hope to see you here. One of my favorite things in the park is taking a boat trip to some of the offshore islands and then investigating the forest, looking for old homesteads and learning about the people who made their livings on the offshore islands. Acadia isn't just one spot, it's a whole series of islands. The bulk of it sits on Mount Desert Island, which is the 5th largest island on the East Coast. So it's not giant, but it's good size. about 17 miles long and 12 miles across. It's shaped like a giant lobster claw. So we have a great big Somme Sound in the middle, great big ocean swath. People have been to Jordan Lake, Cadillac Mountain, the Beehives, which is a really fun, cliffy mountain to climb. Hiking up Cadillac is ambitious. You have some pretty cool beaches, particularly my minor is in geology, and the types of beaches we have here are made out of seashells, which is really common in Florida, but rare in Maine. Cold water environments aren't supposed to have seashell beaches, but we have a couple because of the shape of the landscape. Shore and seabirds, Thunderhole, some great stuff there. I hope you all get to come back or visit for the first time. While I start talking, it would be nice to know what people are majoring in. So if you wouldn't mind throwing your major in the chat box, I can maybe tailor a little bit of this to you. Neuroscience, biochem, history and secondary education, and anthropology. Oh, that's going to be fun. Go ahead and keep putting them in there. I'm going to share my screen. Oh, State's Master Naturalist programs are a great way to go. Communication and design, and a double major in anthropology and sociology. There are a lot of different jobs in the Park Service. Neuroscience might be a stretch, but there's a lot of different jobs in the Park Service. And I would encourage everybody, if you enjoy parks, to look there for part of your career and part of your retirement. When I first started in the park 31 years ago, I found that we have almost 400 employees, but we have about 1,000 volunteers that are responsible for opening our doors. Some are only here for a few hours. Some are here for several months. We have a whole set of people who live in RVs and travel between two parks. Where we are their summer park, and then they go to a winter park as volunteers. 32 hours a week, and they get their trailer spot for free. When I was first starting out, I was 20, and it was like having 6 sets of extra grandparents. They were really fun, and we invested in each other. Even today, we're in communication with each other. Half of them were retired medical personnel. So they were multitasking their careers. All right, I'm going to share my screen. And see how we go here. There we go. Everybody see and hear me okay? Thank you. All right. When you first think about national parks and start to study them, you find that we have a lot of diversity. National Park Service was created in 1916, and that same year, Acadia had its roots, starting as Sudamont National Monument. Over time, legislation changed to protect it and give it more protections. It became Lafayette National Park. Shortly after World War I, it was popular to name things after French generals, even though Lafayette never set foot here. And eventually, with expanding our boundaries, accepting land on the mainland, we took on the name we have today of Acadia. And we are Acadia National Park. 60 miles of Atlantic coastline, offshore islands, multitude of forests, lakes, ponds. Think of a lot of different things when you take a look at Acadia. We have a lot to offer. Recreational opportunities, historic resources as well, like the carriage roads, as well as other historical sites. It's a place to learn about our past. It's also a place to get away from it all and reflect. Enjoy wildlife, and we have a broad array of wildlife, as well as a very diverse set of habitats. Our island, thanks in many parts to weather conditions, as well as a fire we had back in 1947, the island of Mount Desert is a big patchwork quilt of different forest types. Everything from white birch, which grew into the disturbed area where the fire burned, to balsam fir and spruce covered areas, dark, heavy, almost Canadian forest. And wetlands with a diversity all their own. We're open year round. People think about us in the summer or in the fall with beautiful foliage, but it is an amazing place to visit in the winter. Now, we may be open year round, but we're not always accessible by car, at least not all parts of us. To promote recreation, and carriage roads that we have for biking in the summer become cross-country ski trails. And one carriage road and the whole park loop road becomes, instead of a place for cars, a place for snowmobiles. There is one section of the loop road where we plow one lane and you can get in by car to visit Ocean Drive. We're busy through all of New England's weather patterns. Even today, we are approaching a point where we think we're going to hit 4 million visitors this year, which is the highest we've ever had. And managing that use so that everybody can enjoy themselves and have that chance to get away and revive, but at the same time preserve the resources, gets a little tricky. And I'm going to spend just a piece of our talk today talking about how we might manage that. You know, all the beauty of Acadia draws lots of people, but how does that relate to the mission of protecting and preserving a park? To start that talk, I'd like to go to the Organic Act, which I'm sure you're familiar with, learning about parks. Everything we do relates back to that Organic Act because that's what created us as the Park Service. At the end of our talk today, you will find that at least I broadly define our work groups within the park as 6 major groups. Some people break them down into 8. All those groups work together to protect the park and the visitor and to help people enjoy the park. Looking at the original wordage, the parks are here to conserve park resources and provide for their use. So preserving and protecting on one side and providing for their use, not just now, but for future generations, your great grandkids. That's kind of a balancing act with a lot of different nuances to it. Takes some creativity. We have 6 divisions in the Park Service. Our overall mission is carried out through teamwork between those divisions, and I'm going to talk about how they relate. Our 6 core work groups support each other, but I have to be upfront. I have a big bias when it comes to education because I spent my entire career in it. So I'm looking at this through a lens of an educator, and I will talk a lot about how education supports all 6 divisions. That's not to sell anybody short. All 6 divisions support everybody else. But my experience comes from education. The timer on that slide, I forgot I had, sorry. I got to volunteer with the Resource Management Division when I was in college. I got my first seasonal position in the Park Service while still in college. And it was a great opportunity for me because I went to school near here to be able to volunteer in the winter and have housing in the park because I was a volunteer, and then also go to school. It gave me a chance to sample other jobs and other divisions. The resource management team in the park, those are our scientists. They're working on resource issues. They're studying the park to try to learn more. They're working with universities and university researchers who are studying in the park to try to learn more. And we tap into them to try to make better decisions by having a really broad range of knowledge. You'll hear us talk about inventorying and monitoring resources, mitigating different resource damage, either from storms or human use, and working to safeguard against negative impacts of too much visitation. Inventorying and monitoring. Have you heard that before? Some of you have. I work, one of my jobs you'll find is to work with middle school in a residential program where we assign students to tell us, to study us and to tell us if we're achieving our mission. And through that, we talk about random sampling, and we start doing everything from counting trees in the forest to looking for insect life to looking at what size population of barnacles we have in the intertidal zone. And the kids are like, why are we doing this? Well, how can you tell if we're doing our mission if we don't know what we have? Do we have the same wildlife species in the park today that we had when we were created in 1916? Have we lost any species? Have we gained any? And we have both lost and gained. Shortly before we became a park, the last timber wolves of this area were extirpated, were killed off locally. Over the years, coyotes have moved in to fill that niche. We now have coyote populations. We have seen a decline in some of our bird species, but thanks to conservation, they've made a comeback. The peregrine falcon, the eastern peregrine falcon, is extinct. We've lost it. We no longer have it. Thanks to scientists, they have been able to bring in a Midwestern peregrine falcon, which is similar, and release it in the park to fill that niche within the food chain. And those birds have made quite a comeback. They're not even considered endangered anymore, locally, New England wide. So inventorying and monitoring is something that we always have to do. And we're incredibly fortunate here because some of the earliest vacationers to the Maine coast were from universities, and they were nature clubs that would come up here and study and sketch and even take plant samples and press them and collect bugs and preserve them in alcohol. Dr. Proctor collection from the very early 1900s was recently donated to the park. So when we do an inventory or study of insects in the park today, we can compare them to insects that were here in the early 1900s and see what the species changes are. As I mentioned earlier, we work with threatened and endangered species, trying to protect them. This floating nest platform for loons is an example of that. We have loons that love to nest in the early spring right near Echo Lake Beach, which is a popular swimming hole in the park. And it's also a popular place for fourth grade to take their final class trip and run all over the beach. The loons nest right near the water's edge because of the way they're built. Have you ever seen a loon up close? It's almost the size of a goose with a shorter neck. And their legs, think of a goose, where a goose's legs would be, and then put them 6 inches further back on the body. So the whole body's on one side and the legs are on the end, which makes for excellent swimming and diving, but a loon cannot walk. So So they have to kind of push themselves up on the shore and nest. And they're doing this on a beach, which is very quiet in May, and lo and behold, overrun with people in June. To try to protect them and keep them safe from people and people safe from them, because they do have sharp beaks, we've built nesting platforms, which they seem to take to. Every spring we have one floating off from Echo Lake Beach. Some resource managers study how people use parks. They track overcrowding and help make decisions on, how much different habitats can survive with impact. It's a new type of science called social science, and we actually have a social scientist in the park. It's a hired position. There are resource managers who help take care of all kinds of historic sites and museum objects and artifacts. We hire historians as well as cultural land managers to help with the park collection, which is open to the public and open to researchers. So that's the resource management division. Another division, and this is the one most people think about when they think about a park ranger, is our protection division. That includes law enforcement, which here in Acadia has both front and back country patrol. They run our lifeguard program and our really offshore island program like Isla Ho, which is way out to sea. They have 78 islands to patrol where we deal with such issues as poaching, seedling theft, resource damage, and out of bounds camping. We're a small park with 3.5, now approaching 4 million visitors. Everybody wants to just stay in a beautiful spot for one night, but then they leave and the next person comes in and stays in an out of bounds site the next night. So there has to be somebody checking to make sure people are not using the wrong spot to camp in, that they're sticking to hardened surfaces and other ways to protect the park. Have you ever heard of seedling theft? Okay. I hadn't when I first started in the park. And the first time they called in plant poachers, it surprised me to listen to over the radio as our rangers had to track down people who were in our forest digging up plants to sell to nurseries. We even had an incident where somebody came in the middle of the night and cut the sod out of the lawn in front of one of the concessionaire's restaurants. There's a couple places in the park where you can eat, and they do have lawns, and somebody came in and stole the lawn, which would not be something you think of doing, having to deal with as a park ranger. But in very busy parks, there's a little bit of everything. We caught a man catching endangered butterflies in the park. And when we asked him what he was going to do with them, he said he was going to sell them because there were people who buy these rare species for their collection. And he claimed to not know what was wrong. When we searched his backpack and materials, we found the letter from the buyer who told him that the rangers wouldn't know anything and he should just play dumb and he'd get away with it. He did not. We tend to think about poaching as taking moose or bear or deer, but there's all kinds of poaching that takes place from your parks. So one of law enforcement's jobs is to be there to protect even the butterflies. Law enforcement and protection division is also responsible for our search and rescue and emergency medical evacuations. We have EMTs. Here on the island, there are times when we have 3 rescues going on at the same time because there's a lot of people here in July and August. Sometimes somebody is way in the backcountry when they're hurt, and it takes a lot of people to get them out safely. Our crew is only so big, so we rely heavily on a well-trained core of volunteers, community volunteers, Acadia Search and Rescue. They have about 70 members. Fire management is a big deal. I talked about the 1947 fire. Not only putting out fires, but also managing the landscape to prevent them. Reducing brush in high use areas. Probably one of the biggest fire management projects that goes on in the park is done by maintenance, and that's simply mowing the side of the road to prevent fire spreading from cars and humans. Fuel reduction work, also watching for fires, checking for fires during high danger periods. Our leadership work group and our administration divisions can overlap in some parks. Our leadership is our park superintendent and our deputy superintendent, and then the lead for each division, our chiefs or our directors. They are involved in park planning and community involvement, compliance, making sure that the park is carrying out the laws and regulations that are required of us. They work with a lot of the issues that would be internal to any business, ethics, personnel, budget, procurement. Then we also have concession management within parks. Concessionaires are allowed to operate, but only within certain regulations. So we have to have people who are working with them to make sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to. The next and probably biggest division in any park is our maintenance division. And they do a really important job with health and safety, as well as the fire fuel reduction that I was talking about. Maintenance leads the park in responsibility for visitor health and safety, and it includes everything from chipping and mowing crew to our construction and maintenance crews. We have many miles of historic roads, so we need people with special skills and technology to maintain those roads historically, yet protect them from changes. Our cars nowadays are much heavier than they used to be in the early 1900s. The level of traffic and population that we get on our roads is higher. And now with climate impacts, the volume of water we get in certain storms can be tremendously higher than it used to be. A good example of that, a month ago, we had a storm in the park. On one end of the park, we got 1.5 inches in about 3 hours. But the cloud pattern was such that on the other end of the park, up at Schoodic, the far east side of the park, got like 6 inches of rain in an hour. And it washed out bridges and bike paths and had an impact that we're still dealing with now. I told you earlier, I'm going to look through the lens of an educator. The visitor experience and education team is the division I'm in. Frequently, you'll hear it called interpretation in education. But really, we are involved with the front door of the park and visitor experiences. We're responsible for visitor services, welcome center operation, nature centers, museums, producing the map that you get when you come to the park, helping people find their way. This picture is a little odd, but during COVID, our visitor center is in the parking lot. So we've got our tent city going there. We're also responsible for public programs, festivals, and school programs. We make a lot of the periodicals that you read when you come to the park. We are responsible for putting together the park's website. We have a graphics editor. We have writers. We even have a videographer. So a lot of different careers within the Park Service. Within our division, the education team that I coordinate focuses on kindergarten through 12th grade curriculum and adult ed. The adult ed is more curriculum-based family programming. And we also help train our peers in interpretation for working with children. We do a wide variety of programs for schools. And that's what makes it so exciting for me, because it's different every day. We have developed in-person field trips, 2 per grade level, 1 in the spring, 1 in the fall. We have 18 topics for teachers to pick from. We are curriculum-based. We support programs with pre and site materials for teachers to use. Those in-person visits, trips to the park, are the top priority. It's the greatest opportunities for students to connect with resources and foster the strongest sense of place and sense of stewardship. So it's one place where we put and invest our time. But there's other ways to link in with us from schools. You don't have to be here in person. We do have a residential education program, both 3 and 4 days long, and it offers 16 programs for teachers to choose from, so they can tailor their students' visits to what they're studying in their classroom. We do have classrooms to support that, but we spend the majority of our time outside studying the environment and then coming in to warm up. We also do school outreach, where we drive within an hour's radius of the park and do programming for kindergarten through 5th grade. And we have activities and curriculum material for teachers to use in their own schoolyard to do outdoor classroom work. And I said earlier, you don't have to be here to have us visit your classroom and learn about the park. And COVID really highlighted that over the last year and a half. We have 33 virtual programs that kindergarten through 12th grade teachers can sign up for. We currently have done, in the last 7 months, we've done about 800 programs, worked with 16,000 students in 47 states. Now, most of those kids aren't going to get to come to Acadia until maybe they're an adult, but that doesn't mean they can't learn about their park and enjoy it. Our K-12 programming is curriculum-based again, and it ranges from everything from puppet programs that are interactive for little kids to physics for 8th grade. The physics of waves, the physics of bird calls, everything related to the park. We've had local schools request that we do nature clubs for their students during COVID, to give their kids a chance to work on some social, emotional learning and to connect skills that they can then go into their backyard and use. And then another thing my district offers is teacher professional development. We have outdoor classroom grants and workshops that are supported by Friends of Acadia. We have park-based workshops. There's 25 teachers here right now studying in the park. And then we have 6 Acadia Teacher Fellows every year who study in the park for 6 weeks. And it's a paid position where they get to learn about the park, and then Friends of Acadia actually helps them take their whole classroom on a trip to a natural area near their school, or come up to our residential ed program. While they're here, they work with scientists in the field, both on the island and offshore islands. Something that's kind of neat that has grown out of that, just to give you an example of one thing we do or have provided. Teachers asked for short nature videos that they can use with their little kids, kindergarten, first grade, to help make observation skills, to use as a centering project in the morning, and also to help develop language skills with asking questions and answering questions. Our staff has gone out and made a series of 1-minute videos that the teachers can download from our website. My team is not large, but we get a lot done. And what I'd like to do is just take a moment and show you how my education team supports other divisions. There are other things those the divisions are doing that support us. Interpretation and education rangers make a lot of the publications that you find in the park. Those publications are geared towards educating the public about the issues we have going on in the park. Is there an invasive insect that we need to be watching out for? What aspects of leave no trace are most important to follow in the park? Things like that, things that support resource management, things that support administration. Our education team develops programming that highlights topics of concerns for resource management. We actually developed a bat program that we take out into schools, teaching students about the importance of bats and what is going on with white nose syndrome. While the kids are doing this program, they actually get to do hands-on with puppets, some of the same research and measuring on stuffed puppets that our researchers are doing in the field with real bats. And then they take their measurements that they've collected and use a dichotomous key to key out the type of bat species that they have. The same way our research scientists would in the field with a real bat. We have teacher workshops that highlight the importance and methods of inventorying and monitoring, which leads to several bio blitzes that you can even participate in through iNaturalist. Highlighting some of the things going on in the park also is supported by our festivals. Peregrine falcon reintroduction is something we talk about in the field with people. At one of our closed trails for peregrine falcons, we set up a spotting scope and help people see where the nest is up on a cliffside from a safe distance in the parking lot. And we even interpret some of our wildlife issues at our park festivals. We've designed whole school field trips around some of the history in the park, bringing out a lot of the resources from our museums and helping connect the local community with issues that our curators want people to know about. And probably one of the biggest jobs we do in the park is orientate people safely on how to have a safe visit, find what they need and find what they want to visit in a leave no trace sensitive manner. If I can help you find your way around the park and have a safe hike without getting hurt, then 12 of us don't have to go out on that trail to bring you back, and it's a lighter use on that trail. Education rangers do provide basic first aid and radio contact in the field. We teach leave no trace. We publish key park alerts on the webs and social media so that people know what the current issues in the park are, like live going on today. I have just thrown a lot at you about the 6 different divisions, again, from my lens. I would love to take questions and then talk about anything you folks would like to talk about. I'm going to stop sharing here so we can see each other a little better. If you
So
want.
Kate, I had some technical difficulties, so I missed all the majors that we have here, but I started listing the employment opportunities. But you know, you also think about what majors are included in those employment opportunities. I got meteorology, archaeology, biology, hospitality, security, education, IT, leadership, medical rescue, marketing. Did I miss anything? I mean, there's just so much that can be done, and not everybody has a degree in that particular field. They just kind of walk into it, don't they, Kate, when they start in the Park Service?
Some of both. You know, I had a forestry degree. I didn't plan to be, you know, teaching science initially, but I ended up in interpretation, and that was a field that really appealed to me. So I looked at other education avenues that would help me continue in it. We have a mix of people who all they want to do is be a park ranger in resource management, or all they want to do is be a, you know, an interpreter. But many more people come to a career in the parks just with their skill set, and then learn on the job. You know, some exceptions would be like accounting. You have to have certain background. Trades are really big in the Park Service as well, and we don't advertise that enough. But you know, you think about where parks are, and some are quite remote. We have 100 cars in Acadia, an ambulance, brush truck, fire truck. We need a mechanic. So that is a job you can do in the Park Service. Mechanics, mowing crew, heavy equipment operators, historical architect, historical mason, doing not just masonry and brickwork, but something with the chemistry of early cements, having a deeper understanding on that end, and old approaches. You don't want somebody coming in to work on a historical foundation with new material.
Kate, I had a question about your cultural management and kind of the connections to local indigenous tribes and peoples. Just in regards to like what the connection is and how closely do you all work? What's the relationship?
We work fairly close, both, I mean, obviously cultural lands and land management work with the local tribes. And then interpretation does as well. We're on the traditional homelands of the Wabanaki people, which is Micmac, Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, Penobscot people, and then through trade to our south, the Abenakis. On a lot of different levels, they have worked together, both for using the land in the park, and then also sharing the Wabanaki culture out to educate people about the history of the area. We have something called Cultural Connections. In the summer, you can look it up on our website, where artisans from the Wabanaki tribes come and share their skills and their talent in the park, whether it be a drumming circle or weaving baskets. We once had a man who came and spent a good amount of time making a wigwam for people to be able to take a good look at and understand. Another one was building canoes. And they would be available in public areas like our nature center, so that the public could come through all day for a number of days
Hmm.
and watch him doing his work.
Thank you.
You also have poets and artists in residence, and don't you have a poet laureate who came from Acadia?
We don't have a laureate program. We do have an artist in residence program, and we have hosted other people's poet laureates. Mimi White from New Hampshire comes to mind. But we do have quite a vigorous artist in residence program where people apply and then come and stay in the park and do their work as it would relate to Acadia.
And that's also throughout the national park system too, isn't it, Kate? The artist in residence opportunities. And I say that because our students are, some of them are STEM, but many of them are heavy in the humanities as well. And what about the equine? I know at Rocky Mountains we rode horses. There's carriage trails at Acadia. Is that a private concessionaire, or is that through the park system?
If you own your own horse, you can come horseback riding in the park. You can even camp with your horse at a concessionaire down at Wildwood Stables. The operation in the park is just carriage rides. They don't rent individual horses anymore. That is what we refer to as a concessionaire.
Okay. Well, I'll leave it to the students now to ask some questions if they have any. Something got you all online today. Tell us what it was.
While they're thinking of questions, I just want to say I noticed the picture of the two young students in the classroom with the goggles on, and their goggles were color coordinated to their shirts. So the pink shirt with pink goggles and green shirt with green goggles.
I never noticed that. That's our marine chemistry program at the Scudic Education Adventure Program.
So Hannah is asking, do we need a master's degree to become a park ranger?
Not at all, no. I needed to get one because I wanted to move up and become permanent in the same park. I took a little bit different road than other people. A lot of times, and it's fun when you're young, people will work at a park for a few years and then move up to another job by moving to a different park as things open. And if you're willing to bounce around the country, you get to see wonderful, diverse parts of our country. And if you're willing to move, which is fairly easy when you're young, you can move up, get a permanent job and move up over time. I stayed in the same park because I was the legal caregiver for my parents. So I had to take a different route to become permanent, and getting the master's helped me. Once you are permanent in the Park Service, there are actually funds you can apply for to help with advanced education.
That was my next question, Kate. A lot of students think they have to go straight into a graduate program. Sometimes getting a job out with your bachelor's degree might help you pay for that master's or PhD if you get the job that supports it.
Right, yeah.
Thank you, Hannah.
Kate, one of the things I do notice in a lot of national parks is that the average age of volunteers is rather old, and we really need to. What efforts are being done for the next generation of volunteers?
You are correct. We do have young volunteers in the park, but they tend to come for shorter periods of time. And just trying to educate about the opportunities and make them available in different formats so that somebody who only has a month off, between schools could volunteer. I do have teaching assistants and interns that work for me for 6 to 12 weeks. depending upon the season, and it's a good way to get in and get your feet wet. And we do have volunteers that also work with our education programs. We have a youth conservation corps in the park for high school to early college that works on trail crew. They are paid a stipend, a good wage, minimum wage, and then a stipend at the end of the season if they stay through the whole season, kind of like a scholarship for clothes or school or whatever you need to go back to school. I see some questions in the
Jessica
chat.
wants to know the strangest case that you've had to deal with where someone's trying to take something from a park that they weren't supposed to. I mean, sod seems pretty strange to me, but was there anything else that might have been a little strange? And we have a couple other questions as well.
Yeah. My roommate caught somebody digging up petunias, not petunias, peonies to sell to a nursery that were growing. Those aren't native in the state, but they were growing on an old historic site. I think the butterfly was the weirdest one.
Yeah.
And is organized around it.
Is the search and rescue or medical team predominantly volunteers, or are they made up of actual park staff, Kate?
We have both. We have a park search and rescue team, very well trained folks, mostly from the law enforcement division or protection, but they also pull from all the other divisions. If I have a staffer who's interested in that, I make sure they get into the training. Because it's good both for my staff to understand what's going on in other divisions, and also good for them to build their resume for other parks. So we do have paramedics and EMTs. And did I select Acadia or was I placed there? When you apply to parks, you select the parks that you want to apply to. Way back in the olden days, people applied to the ranger service and you were appointed. And then after a couple of years, you get a letter and it would tell you and your whole family were moving to another park. It doesn't work that way now. You apply to the park you want to work in as a seasonal. You apply to the permanent jobs you want to try to get into. Once you're permanent, you stay in that place until you apply for another job at a different park. New TV show idea, NPS in Search and Rescue. They actually did that back in the 70s. And I remember loving it as a kid. A modern day one wouldn't be bad.
You have so many opportunities for expansion, you know? SNR Acadia, SNR volcanoes.
Yeah. There's definitely different issues that we deal with at Acadia versus an urban park versus something out west.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that everyone that's here has been to a national park, but I'm just curious if there's anybody that has not. And it's not a judgment, it's just a curiosity. Raise your hand.
I haven't been to Acadia, but I've been to a lot of others. And then I had another question, like recently my family and I have been going to some national parks, and like we hiked Half Dome last summer. And there's a lot of new, like, because it's getting so populated and everyone's finding out about all these hikes and wanting to do them, there's been a lot of like new wait lists and stuff for them. Like you can't just hike them at your free will anymore. And I guess I was wondering if there's anything like that, since you guys said it's going to be the most people you've ever had, like, is that something that's going to happen in Acadia?
Yes, and yes. Not so much for hiking and trail, I hope. We are a park that when you look at us on a map, we look like a giant puzzle with every other piece being public land, private land, public land, private land, because we are a 99% donated land. So managing all the traffic to the popular spots has become an issue. For the last several years, for example, Cadillac Mountain is really popular. For the last several years, we've had a hard time with Cadillac becoming overcrowded. You know, it first started to get kind of full, and we started to have to put up signs telling people park only in the parking lot. And then as time went on, we had to put up signs that said, don't park here. And we had to put up a lot of them because people would park on both sides of the road and you couldn't really get an ambulance through. And then an RV would come up and get stuck and you couldn't get anything through. So we had to limit what could go up the mountain. Then we had to close down the mountain for an hour or so till people would leave and congestion would ease. A few years back, we got to a point where we were closing the mountain 7 or 8 times a day. And last fall, we worked with the public, looking at a whole bunch of scenarios of how could we manage Cadillac Mountain. And last fall, we did a pilot where you had to get a reservation to go up Cadillac. And that is now in its first full year. And we're learning from it. But the idea is to limit the number of people going up to the number of parking lot spots there are. And trying to find that sweet spot where people go up and stay and then just naturally come down so that we're not sending up too many people. That doesn't mean Cadillac Mountain won't be busy when you visit it, but it does mean that with a little bit of patience, you should be able to find a parking spot and people will stop parking, you know, on the cliffs.
And a future gondola is probably out of the question, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. So some people are upset that they have to get a reservation. To handle the reservation, you know, we don't have the software to do that. So we went with a national company. Well, that national company costs money. So now the reservation costs money to pay for the company to make the reservation. And there's like $2 for the company and $3 for the park to pay the people who have to run the gate to check the pass. So $5 doesn't sound like much, but it can be a hardship for some people. And we want everybody to be able to enjoy the park. So where do you find that balance point? And there's a lot of discussion around that. And some people, you know, discuss it academically, and some people discuss it with passion, and hearing everybody out is important. Did I hit at what you were asking?
We have time for one more question, if anyone has one. Hannah says Shenandoah was her first vacation, right? That's Shenandoah is amazing.
I would love to see that someday.
Yeah.
And Shenandoah also has traffic problems with Skyline Drive running right through the middle of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If anybody is looking, if anybody is interested in looking for experience and they're willing to volunteer, we have volunteer.gov, which you can go on and look at for positions. Frequently volunteers get free housing. There's some assistance in travel. There's also the Student Conservation Association. And then if you look on naturalist websites, we advertise our teaching assistant through the Budick Institute, which is our nonprofit partner. And while that pays minimum wage, it does come with free housing.
What a great opportunity too to travel, right, Kate? I keep thinking if I was 20, I'd go to Alaska right now.
That would be fun.
Just because I have a job right now. It's not my age. It's just, you know, if I was between terms and stuff, I would go to Alaska. It's a very amazing place. But I saw the students taking notes, so they're going to volunteer in the park, I'm sure. or find an internship, or join us next year when we're doing actual adventures in the parks. We are looking at all over the country, including Alaska. And those connections you make with park rangers as well as faculty around the campfire is pretty cool. We've got Fulbright scholars and other scholarship awardees who learned about those opportunities around the campfire. So you guys really think about it. It's doesn't the average American spend, or average visitor spends 20 minutes in a national park? This is your opportunity to go for 5 to 7 days and really get to know the park. In fact, we got special badges in Everglades because no one else could make it through the whole week that we did because of the mosquitoes. But we had fun. We wore nets. We were all okay. So Kate, thank you so much. This was great. And we're going to keep the momentum going for Partners in the Parks and the National Park Service. And you're a part of it. We really appreciate that. And the students participating, thank you all so much. And I hope you're having a good summer. Go volunteer at a national park, if not this summer, next summer, or join us in the parks. Or at the national conference, we'll also be doing some virtual campfires too, won't we, Christina, in the hotel?
In Orlando, yep.
That's right. So we'll be talking about PIP there too.
And I believe Acadia is in the lineup for next summer.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
All right.
I'd love to talk to you about that.
Yes.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. And Kate, the 2 faculty that will be doing, I'll put them in touch with you because they've been already reaching out to former park staff, but I'll also have them reach out to you because you're a wealth of information, a great resource, and I know you'll be able to get them into behind the scenes. So we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the invite.
Yes, certainly. Thank you all so much.
And Melissa, what's up? What's up next month?
Oh yeah.
August was canceled because we were working with an international partner who was not able to do his trip, but we'll be back in September, and the topic is sort of health and wellness and mindfulness in national parks.
Okay.
So hope to see you all there.
Sounds good. Third Thursday at 3.
Thank you.